Comic Boom.
Hey guys, Comic Boom here to review Wonder Woman issue 752. Steve Orlando continuing to weave a tale involving 14 different players. I mean, last time I reviewed issue 751 and I rattled off all the different female characters that are part of this. There's a lot of them there. And here we get some very specific focus on Valda the Iron Maiden from the pages of Eric, Son of Thunder. Now, there's a comic book that I haven't read since the 80s, and even in the 80s, frankly, it wasn't really my favorite comic book. I don't know much about Valda the Iron Maiden, but apparently, out of the blue, she just shows up in Boston. This Valda the Iron Maiden shows up in Boston in a bar. Apparently, she's fighting in her own land thousands of years in the past. She's chased by this giant metallic bull and ends up disappearing and then reappearing in Boston. How she ended up in a nightclub in Boston, I mean, can you imagine? She ends up stabbing a guy in a bar in downtown Boston. And this poor guy, the poor bastard, all he did is he walked up to her, and she's this good-looking chick. She looks like a cosplayer, obviously, sporting a sword, spouting some nonsense about being chased by a metal bull. He probably laughed at her, tried to console her, probably offered to buy her a drink. She ends up stabbing him. I mean, and then out of the blue, Wonder Woman decides to show up, you know, because there's this crazy woman, there's this crazy Iron Maiden-looking woman in a nightclub going nuts in Boston. Wonder Woman shows up, big fight ensues. Wonder Woman once again does her compassion supplication trick there, please, you know, don't fight me, etc., etc. I'm sure we can talk about this, we'll understand, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. And Wonder Woman eventually befriends Valda. Valda calms down, and in typical Wonder Woman fashion, because Wonder Woman calmed her down, she's not going to hold Valda accountable for the fact that she stabbed a guy. I mean, once again, if you're a male in this comic book, it doesn't bode well for you, even if you're the victim. You know, God forbid you want to help a woman out. You see a crazy woman in a bar, you walk up to her, you see if she's okay, you listen to her story. If she's a little wacko, you try to laugh it off. But in this case, it doesn't work because you get stabbed. That's what happens to the poor bastard in this comic. But hey, that's a side note. What happens to men in this issue just isn't important, because we can get sidelined and we get to talk about and we hear about Devastation talking to Von Gunther, Paula Von Gunther. And Paula Von Gunther regales us with yet more of her origin. Now, this is something that Steve Orlando has been hinting at for quite a while, and this is pretty good stuff. WarMaster, Paula Von Gunther is the WarMaster, and she elaborates and explains to Devastation that she comes from a history of Valkyries, who her family name has always fought the Amazons. They've always battled against the Amazons, and the Von Gunther family line has been used has for centuries kept a crypt as the seat of their power. And Von Gunther explains something. She tries to reconcile what we discovered in issue. In the Wonder Woman Annual 3, that Leviathan is the person who clued Paula Von Gunther into her true heritage. That essentially, yes, she comes from a long line of women who've been pissed off at the Amazons. And as we all know from our lives, and especially in the lives of anything to do with Wonder Woman, it's an actual demonstrable fact that women generally don't get along with other women. This is a fact, and it's absolutely a fact in the pages of Wonder Woman. You can't have two women in the same room in a Wonder Woman comic book and have them get along. That just doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. Wonder Woman runs into Iron Maiden in a nightclub, and naturally they fight each other and try to kill each other with swords. That's just the way it is. Devastation has a conversation with Von Gunther here. Von Gunther explains why she hates Wonder Woman so much, and it's because Von Gunther, of course, Paula Von Gunther was a member of Argus for the longest time, fought against bad guys, evil, and everything else. But then she discovers, because Leviathan clues her in and says, you know, your real parents were actually part of the Von Gunther line, and you have a heritage of being in this war against the Amazons. And naturally, Paula von Gunther abandons being good, and upon discovering that her family lineage is evil, she becomes evil. I'm not sure I quite follow the logic there, and I really don't like the addition of Leviathan as being part of that, because Leviathan, if you're going to include one male character, did you have to include the idiot Leviathan in that background? But in any event, I want to give Steve Orlando some props here. I'm making fun of a little bit of the storyline, but I love the fact that Steve Orlando is having fun here. He's at least throwing a bunch of stuff at the wall, and at least it's fun stuff. It's action-packed with or at least we know it's going to head somewhere. We know we're going to be getting the four horsewomen of Apocalypse, consisting of Devastation, Paula von Gunther, the WarMaster, and two other ones that we're not sure about. Well, hints is that it might be Genocide, which is really cool because I love Genocide as a crazy Wonder Woman villain that Gail Simone introduced. It's Genocide and another character which I won't spoil, but in any event, this is really building up to something good, and it looks like with Valda the Iron Maiden helping Wonder Woman out, this is really building towards something. Now, there's interesting things here about Paula von Gunther says that when she worked for Argus, Argus may have made me Diana's pawn. But it also brought Leviathan himself to my door. Using Leviathan's surveillance and the family records I was given, I located this burial site. Touching the spear of Gudra, I communed with my bloodline. At once I felt our war against the Amazons as if I myself fought every battle. Von Gunther's playing the Nazis for tools to rediscover Themyscira. Von Gunther suppressing Amazon plans to influence the American Revolution. Von Gunther's turning the seas red with Amazon blood, each generation going back to the first conflict. Her ancestors were the Valkyries, they were the explorers, just like the Vikings they watched over. They came to Themyscira in peace and were met with hatred, and Gudra was the only survivor. The Amazons slaughtered the rest of the Valkyrie, and I felt each one. And we got beautiful art here, beautiful art by, who's the artist? A beautiful artist, Max Rayner, great artist, really good art. I'm very impressed. Interesting history on von Gunther, on her family lineage of the von Gunthers going all the way back to the very first conflict. Interesting that apparently the Amazons had an influence on the American Revolution. That's news to me. Interesting that the Amazons had an influence, I guess, in World War II, but I guess that would make sense with 5G. Wonder Woman first coming to man's world in 1939, according to the new 5G timeline, assuming that's going to stay in place. And, of course, von Gunther making a point of saying that the Amazons, that the von Gunthers themselves were not Nazis. They simply used the Nazis as tools for their machinations, which I kind of wish von Gunther was a Nazi. I would prefer that. Once again, it's the shying away from taking a hard line like that I think is a mistake. Von Gunthers were Nazis. They think like Nazis. I would have just doubled down on that. But hey, it's still pretty good. I love it. And I really like it ends with a note that Valda is attacked by the creature that was attacking her when she left her homeworld. I'm not really sure if I think that's an unnecessary distraction. I like where this is going. It's clear that Steve Orlando just wants to tell a great story before 5G kicks in, and he's having fun with this. I'm enjoying it. I had a good laugh with watching Wonder Woman Valda fight in the nightclub, and I still get a kick at how men are just treated in this comic book. It's just a good laugh. There's complete whatever the opposite of emasculation is, that's what this comic book is about. Anyways, it was actually kind of a lot of fun. Steve Orlando is having fun writing it. He's doing a good job. I'm being entertained. It is what it is. Guys, tell me what you think of Wonder Woman issue 752. Hit the subscribe button. Follow me on Twitter at Metropolis40. And until next time, Comic Boo out.